The nice meat ragu, flavorful meat ragu inside, that soft crust. These are always a hit every time I make them. Takes me back to Sicily. It really does. And if you have kids, your kids are gonna go crazy for these. Today we're making ravazzate, a Sicilian specialty, originally from Palermo. It's really a hidden gem of Sicilian street food. Most people, when they think of Sicilian street food, they think of pane panelle, arancini, croquettes, but they don't really talk about these. These are offered in local bakeries, rosticerias, and you really have to venture out of the main squares to visit places that sell these. And if you wind up visiting a place that sells them, you won't really know what they are, because if you look at them, they just look like a brioche bun, and you don't really know how good they are until you pop one open and you get that meat ragu. They're a great snack, they're a great lunch, they're delicious, and they're actually pretty easy to make. So the first time I had one of these was when I was a kid and I went to Sicily with my grandmother during the summer. It was August, and if you've ever been to Sicily in the summer, August especially, it's hot. And to top it off, we stayed with family in an apartment that was above a bakery. So the first morning I woke up and I smelt bread. And that day we went into the shop and I looked around. And I remember as a kid not recognizing anything that was for sale in there. Especially coming from America, you don't really see the Sicilian specialties. In fact, sometimes Italian Americans are shocked when they see certain Sicilian specialties. They're like, hey, is that even Italian? Because they're not exposed to it. But when you go to the small towns in Sicily, you really get a taste of the local cuisine. While the rest of Italy's arguing over what's Italian and what's not Italian, the Sicilians are just making whatever the hell they want. And that's the beauty of Sicily. So I tried the ravazzate, I was immediately hooked as a kid. And you're gonna be too. Now enough with the talking, let's run through the ingredients. For the ragu, we have beef, pork, red wine, carrot, celery, and onion, bay leaves, peas, and tomato paste. For the dough, we have 00 flour, sugar, salt, yeast, and lard. So let's start with the dough. So we have the flour in the mixer. Now we're gonna add in some dry yeast. Let that mix up, and some sugar. Now we're gonna slowly start adding in the water. So this is like the last of the water. Now we're gonna add in the lard. If you don't have lard, you could use Crisco. After about 5 minutes of mixing, we're gonna add in the salt. All right, so the dough looks good. Just gonna kind of form it into a ball. I'm gonna let it rest in here until it doubles in size. We're gonna cover this with some cling wrap. Keep it airtight. All right, so the dough's resting. Now let's make our ragu. We're gonna add a little olive oil to a pan. Now we're gonna add in our sofrito. All right, so our vegetables are starting to soften up. Now we're gonna add in the meat. Now we're gonna add in a little pork. Now we're gonna stir this up, kind of mix the meats, mix the veg, get everything all mixed up. So now we're gonna season it up with a little salt and pepper. All right, so the meat's picking up some color. It's time to add in some red wine. So now we're gonna let this red wine evaporate. We're gonna cook out all the red wine. Sweetness from the wine is gonna get into the meat and sweeten everything up. So we're gonna let this cook, simmer for a little bit, let all the red wine evaporate. All right, so the wine is pretty much fully evaporated. Now we're gonna add in some tomato paste. Now we're gonna stir this all up. So I'm not adding water yet. I want this to kind of cook together for a minute or two. I feel like letting the paste cook with the meat a little bit gives a little extra flavor to the ragu. Now we're gonna add in some water. I'm using tomato paste because I want the sauce to be thick. If you use passata or whole peeled tomatoes, it's gonna leave like a watery sauce. We want a real thick ragu. I'm also gonna add in some bay leaves. Now we're gonna add in some peas. Now we'll stir it all up. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pretty much put this on low heat. We're gonna cover it and let it cook for like 15-20 minutes. All right, so after about 15-20 minutes, this is what your ragu should look like. There's really no liquid in here, it's tight. We're gonna let this sit, we're gonna let this cool off. One of the tricks is to refrigerate it. You could either refrigerate it for an hour and a half or throw it in the freezer for a half hour. Or if you have time, you could let it rest in the refrigerator overnight. So after a few hours, your dough should double in size. All right, so now we're gonna cut the dough up. We're gonna cut 2.5 ounce balls. This way you're gonna need a scale. So we got our dough balls cut. We're gonna grease a sheet pan. We're gonna roll these dough balls out. And we're gonna let them rise again. So you're gonna roll them to the back, kinda, fold them to the back and squeeze. What we're doing here is we're pretty much sealing the air inside the dough ball. So just kind of keep squeezing that. That's it. All right, so the dough's perfect. They all have a little space between each other to grow. Now we're gonna cover it with a damp rag for about another hour. So now it's the fun part. Let's put these together. Got our dough, looks perfect. It rose nice. Didn't rise a lot, but it's perfect. We're gonna stretch these out to little discs. All right, so this is perfect. This is kind of the size you want. It's like, I guess like the size of my hand. All right, so I have the ragu put in the refrigerator, cooled it off completely. And this, one of the secrets here is using really cold ragu. So we're gonna put it right in the center. And now we're gonna seal it up. So you're gonna pull away and up. And then you're gonna pull this side up. And then you're gonna pull this back side up. And we're gonna squeeze them all together. It's very important that this seal is good because you don't want them to pop in the oven. Kind of looks like a dumpling. So take your time on this part. Twist it a little bit. See that? The little hole right there. Let's get that nice and tight. And this dough is really easy to work with. All right, that's perfect. So now we're going to put these on a parchment lined baking sheet. All right, so now we're going to brush them with a little egg wash, little sesame seeds, and bake them. This is going to give that color in the oven, that golden color. All right, top these off. All right, so these look good. I sealed them up perfectly. They're ready for the oven. Let's pop them in. All right, so it's been about 25-30 minutes. And these look perfect. Now you don't want to pop into them right away. We need to let them cool down, get to like room temperature. If we pop into it right now, all the meat's just going to fall right out. So we got to be patient. All right, so these fully cooled down. They came out perfectly. If you look at them, they have a nice color, nice pillowy crust. They came out excellent. These are great too. These, like, most people are gonna look at these and say, hey, what is that, a hamburger, you know? But it's handheld. Usually these are eaten on the go during lunch, during the day. You're hungry, you want something to pick on. These are perfect. And if you have kids, your kids are gonna go crazy for these. Trust me. So let's open one up. Let me show you the inside. Cut this open. And that's really it. The nice meat ragu, flavorful meat ragu inside, that soft crust. These are always a hit every time I make them. So good. Takes me back to Sicily. It really does. If you try this recipe, let me know how you like it in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.